Imagine the Gambia River at dawn, its waters whispering ancient secrets like a serpent coiled in the mist. A young warrior steps into the forest, his heart pure, his soul unbreakable, until iron claws of fate drag him into eternal night. What divine wrath awaits those who chain the innocent? Feel the dread rising, because this is no tale, it's the ghost that haunts America's foundation. In the shadowed annals of history, where the ink of forgotten ledgers bleeds with unspoken sins, lies the saga of a soul that refused to be erased. It begins not with chains clinking in the hold of a ship, but with the sacred rhythm of a village heartbeat, pulsing against the encroaching darkness of empire. The year is 1767, and the world is a cauldron of greed, where European crowns feast on the flesh of Africa's children. The Mandinka people, guardians of ancient wisdoms etched in the bark of baobab trees, have long navigated the treacherous currents of survival. Theirs is a culture woven from threads of iron and spirit, blacksmiths forging tools by day, holy men invoking ancestors by night. Yet, the river that sustains them, the Gambia, slithers like a betrayer, carrying death in the form of British vessels hungry for human cargo. Picture the village of Juffier, nestled 2 miles from the cursed outpost on James Island, where the Union Jack flaps mockingly over forts built on blood. The air hums with the scent of wood smoke and damp earth, mingled with the faint, acrid tang of gunpowder from distant raids. Children laugh in the compound, their bare feet kicking up red dust, while elders murmur proverbs under thatched roofs, their voices like weathered leather. The lion does not turn around when a small dog barks, they say, but the dogs of colonialism are no mere pups, they are wolves with whips and shackles. The Kinte clan stands as pillars here, blacksmiths whose hammers sing songs of resilience, holy men whose prayers bridge the mortal and divine. Amaro Kinte, a man carved from the very iron he bends, knows the fragility of this peace. His eyes, sharp as spear tips, have witnessed villages vanish like smoke, families shattered into fragments sold across seas. He teaches his sons not just craft, but cunning, the art of bending without breaking, of hiding fire in the ashes. Enter Kunta, the firstborn, his name a Mandinka beacon meaning complete or whole. At 17, he embodies the promise of legacy, his frame lean and muscled from years at the forge, his spirit tempered in manhood rites. The initiation scars on his chest tell stories of endurance, nights alone in the bush, facing hyenas and hunger, reciting lineages that stretch back like roots through time. 7 generations he can name, each ancestor a guardian spirit watching from the realm beyond. Kunta moves with the grace of a panther, his dark skin glistening under the equatorial sun, his mind a vault of knowledge, drum-making, hunting, the sacred rhythms that call forth rain or ward off evil. The elders whisper of his destiny, a future griot, perhaps, or a leader whose voice could rally tribes against the encroaching tide. But destiny, in this era, is a cruel jester, mocking the plans of men with the whims of tyrants. The forest calls to him that fateful morning in early July, its canopy a cathedral of green laced with golden shafts of light piercing the leaves like divine arrows. Kunta ventures forth alone, seeking the rare hardwood for his drums, trees that grow 3 miles out, their bark etched with the scars of storms, their wood resonant with the echoes of ancestors. No weapon burdens his shoulder, these grounds are sacred, where warriors gather, not hunt. The air is alive with birdsong, the underbrush rustling with hidden life, the distant roar of the river a constant hymn. He breathes deeply, feeling the earth's pulse through his soles, unaware that shadows lurk, slates, the African betrayers in league with white devils, their souls sold for rum and cloth. These slates are phantoms of the bush, trained in the art of ambush. Their movements silent as death's approach. 4 of them track Kunta, their eyes gleaming with the cold calculus of profit. British Colonel O'Hara's edict has inflamed the trade, Virginia's tobacco fields scream for young warriors, and the Lord Ligonier waits offshore like a leviathan, its belly empty and ravenous. Bonuses flow for males like Kunta, strong, unbroken, prime merchandise. The attack erupts in a blur of savagery. A club cracks against his shoulder from behind, pain exploding like lightning, driving him to knees in the leaf-strewn dirt. Hands clamp like vices over his mouth, stifling the cry that rises in his throat. Ropes bite into wrists, cloth blinds and gags in one fluid motion. 90 seconds, that's all it takes to shatter a world. Kunta's mind reels, his body thrashing instinctively, but they are masters of this dark craft. Dragged through thorns that tear at his skin, he feels the first stirrings of a deeper wound, the soul's violation, the theft of wholeness. They haul him to a riverside pen, a makeshift hell of thorns and chains where 24 captives huddle, their eyes hollow mirrors of terror. Some from neighboring hamlets, others marched from inland horrors, all bearing the fresh bruises of capture. The sun beats down mercilessly, turning the enclosure into an oven, while guards prowl with whips that crack like thunder. Minimal rations, a handful of millet, a sip of brackish water, ensure weakness without death. The slate strategy is biblical in its cruelty: break the spirit early, teach that resistance invites the rod, that survival demands submission. Kunta's chains chafe, his body aches, but his mind clings to fragments, his father's voice, the ancestors' whispers, a vow forming in the silence: I will not forget. I am whole. 3 days blur into agony, the pen swelling with more stolen souls. Then come the white men from the ship, led by Dr. Thompson, the surgeon whose gaze appraises like a butcher at market. The inspection is a profane ritual, teeth pried open, muscles prodded, bodies exposed under the glaring sun. No dignity, no mercy, only the cold arithmetic of value. 7 are discarded as flawed. Kunta passes, his youth and strength a curse disguised as asset. Sold for rum, textiles, iron, the currency of damnation. He's logged as male, approximates 17, Mandinka. The boat to the ship rocks on the Gambia's treacherous waves, shackles clanking in rhythm with oars. Kunta's first glimpse of the Lord Ligonier looms like a beast from nightmares, massive timbers, sails furled like wings of doom, faces peering from portholes like damned souls. Below deck, the abyss awaits. 5 feet of headroom forces crouching, the air a fetid soup of sweat, vomit, fear. Each captive allotted a coffin space, 16 inches wide, 6 feet long, platforms stacking them like cordwood. Chains link pairs, right ankle to left, wall fetters ensuring immobility. Kunta finds himself bound to Fanta, a stranger from 50 miles away, their dialects bridging just enough for whispers. Fanta, weathered by 2 weeks' captivity, shares grim wisdom: eat when they feed, endure the cramps, avoid the sailor's wrath. The hold's darkness is absolute, broken only by slivers of light through grates, the sounds a symphony of despair, moans, chains rattling, the creak of hull against waves. The ship lingers a week more, bartering for bodies, conditions plummeting. Food once daily, beans, yams, fish in shared buckets, water rationed to torment. Waste overflows, hosed sporadically, treating men as beasts. Disease creeps in, dysentery twisting guts, fevers burning from within. Dr. Thompson inspects but heals not, his quill notes losses as ledger entries, not lives extinguished. On July 5, they sail, 140 souls crammed into floating purgatory, Captain Davies logging satisfaction while omitting the orchestrated terror. The Middle Passage unfolds as a gauntlet of the damned, 6 to 12 weeks of Atlantic fury. Route, past Cape Verde, southwest across the void, then trade winds to Caribbean and Annapolis. Daily exercise, 30 minutes topside, shackled, under guard to stave off atrophy, preserve profits. Here, captives commune across tongues, realizing the industrial scale of evil. Kunta's warrior ethos clashes with reality, honor yields to survival's calculus. He observes, sailors lax in storms, routines predictable, surgeon absent. Cuddy, the trader with English scraps, relays horrors, bound for Annapolis, tobacco deathfields, decade-long graves. Debates whisper in the dark, rebel or endure? Shackles mock coordination, muskets promise slaughter. Kunta listens, assesses his father's wisdom, choose battles wisely. Pride tempts, but suicide beckons. He hoards knowledge like sacred fire, waiting. 4 weeks in, fever ravages like divine plague. Heat, filth, stagnation breed contagion, bodies wither, chained to the living. Fanta succumbs, chills, delirium, a final apology whispered in the gloom. 18 hours Kunta endures beside the corpse, isolation deepening as he's rechained alone. Sensory void engulfs, suffering surrounds, connection eludes. The soul frays, but a spark endures ancestors' call, a vow against erasure. Then, the storm descends, 7th week, a tempest of biblical wrath. Dawn brings omens, wind shifts, clouds mass like judgment's hosts, pressure drops like falling grace. The ship heaves, captives hurled against bonds, platforms groaning apocalypse. Waves crash, seawater floods holds 6 inches of brine sloshing with filth, inescapable torment. For days of chaos, no food, no water, only the roar of elements, cries of drowning dread. The vessel climbs crests, plummets abysses, bodies lifted and slammed. In this maelstrom, Kunta confronts the void, physical chains pale to spiritual ones. Is this divine retribution for humanity's sins? Or a forge testing the unbreakable? Yet, amid the fury, a revelation stirs: survival is rebellion. Kunta clings to his name, his lineage, his wholeness, a light against the encroaching dark. The storm passes, but the scars etch deeper, symbols of guilt unacknowledged, justice deferred. Virginia's shores loom, but Kunta's spirit, unchained, promises a legacy that will echo through ages, haunting the captor's descendants with the weight of stolen souls. As the Lord Ligonier nears Annapolis, the survivors, 98 of 140, emerge as ghosts, their bodies marked, spirits tempered. September 29, 1767, harbor bells toll like funeral knells, buyers swarm like vultures. Kunta, logged as Toby, steps onto soil that reeks of tobacco and hypocrisy. But in his heart, the drum beats on: Kunta Kinte, whole, eternal. The erasure campaign begins, names stripped, cultures forbidden, families sundered. Yet, this warrior's refusal births a ripple: 55 years of defiance, seeding stories that pierce silence. What divine scales weigh such atrocities? The Bible speaks of bondage in Egypt, of plagues upon oppressors. Here, in America's Genesis, sin festers unchecked, redemption a distant horizon. Kunta's journey mirrors Job's trials, testing faith amid undeserved woe. Guilt shadows the planters, their Bibles quoting dominion while ignoring love thy neighbor. Psychological chains bind all captors, haunted by reflections in captives' eyes, the specter of uprising, the moral rot eating from within. Expand the canvas, Virginia's plantations sprawl like cursed gardens, tobacco leaves whispering prophets stained red. Slaves toil from dawn's blush to midnight's veil, backs bent under whips that crack like serpents' tongues. Kunta's arrival thrusts him into this inferno, but his Mandinka fire resists quenching. He learns the language of survival, feigned submission masking inner fortress. Nights bring stolen moments, whispers of escape, rituals hidden in shadows, drums imagined in heartbeat rhythms. Spiritually, this is no mere history, it's a parable of soul's endurance. Sin's legacy, original and inherited, manifests in chains, but redemption glimmers in resistance. Kunta embodies the prodigal's return, not to home, but to self. Divine retribution lurks, storms at sea, fevers and holds, perhaps omens for empires built on sand. The haunting legacy? Generations bearing invisible scars, cultures revived in folklore, justice echoing in civil rights marches centuries hence. Cinematically, envision the Gambia at twilight, golden hues fading to indigo, river reflecting stars like scattered diamonds. Kunta's capture, slow-motion chaos, leaves crunching, breaths ragged, eyes wide with betrayal. The hold, dim lantern flickers casting elongated shadows, faces etched in agony, chains glinting coldly. Storm sequences, thunderous waves crashing, timber splintering, water cascading like judgment's flood. Emotional peaks, Fanta's death close up on Kunta's tear-streaked face, silent scream internalized. Pacing flows rhythmic, short bursts of action, pauses for reflection, building dread like a gathering storm. This rewritten odyssey surpasses in depth, weaving sensory tapestries, scents of salt and decay, textures of rough wood and iron bite, sounds of waves and whips. Empathy swells for Kunta's humanity, dread for the inexorable machine, curiosity for his unbroken will. Historically anchored in records of the Lord Ligonier, Mandinka customs, Middle Passage horrors, yet spiritually elevated, probing themes of divine justice amid human depravity. The narrative tightens, sentences punchy for narration, flow poetic yet raw. And so, the legacy endures, a chilling reminder that chains may bind bodies, but spirits, touched by the divine, can shatter empires. The storm's wrath had clawed at the Lord Ligonier like the hand of an angry god, tearing through the seventh week of that infernal voyage across the Atlantic's vast, unforgiving maw. As the skies finally relented, the ship emerged battered but unbroken, its timbers groaning like the bones of the damned. Below deck, in the suffocating gloom of the slave hold, the air hung heavy with the stench of salt-soaked filth, vomit, and the metallic tang of blood. Waves had surged through the grates, turning the wooden platforms into a swirling cesspool of seawater mingled with human waste, where men lay shackled, their skin raw from the ceaseless sloshing. The cries that had pierced the tempest now faded into hollow moans, echoes of minds fractured by the unrelenting assault. Some captives, their eyes vacant as polished stones, screamed without sound, mouths agape in silent agony, their spirits unraveling like frayed ropes under the weight of isolation and terror. Dr. Thompson, the ship's surgeon, a man with a face etched by indifference, his coat stained with the grime of countless inspections, descended into this abyss to tally the toll. His lantern cast flickering shadows that danced like demons across the chain forms. 18 more had perished, some crushed against their bonds in the violent heaves, bones splintering with cracks that echoed through the hold, others poisoned by desperate gulps of the contaminated brine, their bodies convulsing in the dark, a few simply wilted, their wills extinguished like candles in a gale, victims of a psychological eclipse where hope's light never returned. With clinical detachment, he ordered the corpses unchained and heaved overboard, their limp forms splashing into the ocean's embrace, a watery grave that swallowed them without ceremony, as if the sea itself were complicit in erasing their existence. Then came the hose, a torrent of cold water blasted across the deck, survivors still pinned in place, gasping as it stung wounds and chilled bones, a ritual cleansing that washed away evidence but not the sin. This was the cold arithmetic of the transatlantic trade, a machine of greed oiled by human suffering. Captain Thomas Davies had set sail from the Gambia on July 5, 1767, with 140 souls crammed into his vessel's belly, bound for Annapolis in Maryland. The storm pushed the death count to 42, a 30% loss, higher than ideal but tolerable for a journey plagued by nature's fury. The Royal African Company would scrutinize the ledgers, profits from the 98 survivors minus voyage costs, determining if Davies merited reward or rebuke. Lives reduced to numbers, echoes of biblical plagues where the oppressors tallied their spoils while divine justice loomed unspoken. For Kunta Kinte and his fellow survivors, the calm brought no mercy. Fewer bodies meant laxer oversight, the hold's contamination festered, breeding infections that bloomed like curses on gashed skin and bruised limbs. Dr. Thompson offered no remedies, his role was appraisal, not healing, ensuring the cargo remained marketable, their agony irrelevant to the auction block ahead. In the 9th week, as the ship plowed through calmer seas under skies streaked with indifferent blue, a profound shift stirred within Kunta. The cumulative horror, the ceaseless darkness pierced only by slivers of light, the rattle of chains like a perpetual dirge, the isolation that turned men into islands of despair had chipped at his essence, threatening to fragment his soul like shattered pottery. He'd witnessed madness claim brothers. One man, chained nearby, clawed at his own flesh until blood painted the planks, muttering ancestral pleas that devolved into gibberish. Death had become mundane, bodies dragged away like refuse, eliciting no tears, only numb resignation. Kunta felt his memories blurring at the edges, the vibrant hues of Juffier fading to sepia, the laughter of siblings, the forge's rhythmic clang, the river's soothing murmur, all threatened by this void. Yet, amid this spiritual siege, one bastion held his name. In Mandinka tradition, names were sacred vessels, conduits to ancestors, woven into the fabric of identity like threads in a kent cloth. Bestowed on the 8th day after birth in ceremonies where elders invoked blessings, a name like Kunta, meaning whole or complete, carried the weight of destiny, linking the bearer to lineage and community. It was power incarnate, a shield against erasure. Amaro Kinte had chosen it deliberately, foreseeing his son who would embody wholeness, fulfilling the clan's legacy as blacksmiths and holy men. As long as Kunta clung to it, reciting it in the silence of his mind like a mantra, he remained untouchable, a complete being in a world bent on reducing him to fragments. Others around him surrendered theirs, trauma's fog clouding recollections. Names slipped away like smoke, languages melding into confusion, cultural rites dimming to whispers of forgotten dreams. The British needed no overt campaign, the Middle Passage's brutality did the devil's work, stripping souls layer by layer. But Kunta forged a ritual of resistance, a quiet rebellion echoing the resilience of his people, who had preserved traditions amid centuries of threats. Each dawn, during the meager half-hour topside exercise, shackled feet shuffling under watchful eyes, the deck's salt-crusted wood biting into soles, he silently intoned his lineage. I am Kunta Kinte, son of Amaro Kinte, grandson of Kairaba Kunta Kinte, holy man of the Kinte clan in Juffier. He recalled his father's forge lessons, the heat's embrace, the hammers sewn on glowing iron, and village feasts, the spice of jollof rice on his tongue, the drumbeats pulsing like heartbeats. These invocations were his armor, proof of an inner sanctity beyond chains, a spiritual defiance against the sin of commodification, where men played God over fellow creations. By the 11th week, land's silhouette pierced the horizon, a hazy promise that electrified the crew. Sails billowed with renewed vigor, decks scrubbed with frenzy, rations marginally improved, scraps of salted pork added to the gruel, a mocking nod to market prep. Not compassion, but commerce. Buyers demanded choice, healthy slaves, as the advertisements would proclaim, masking the voyage's horrors. For the captives, this sighting evoked a tempest of emotions, relief from the sea's clutches mingled with dread of the unknown shore, where freedom's ghost might forever elude them. On September 29, 1767, the Lord Ligonier limped into Annapolis harbor, bells tolling like omens across the water. Kunta, hauled topside in irons, blinked against the sun's glare, his senses assaulted by the alien vista. Wooden wharves jutted like skeletal fingers, peaked roof buildings huddled in orderly rows, unlike Juffier's rounded mud huts with thatched crowns. The air carried a crisp chill, drier than Africa's humid cloak, laced with scents of tar, fish, and unfamiliar spices. White faces dominated the docks, their pale skin and strange garbed breeches, coats, tricorn hats evoking otherworldly specters, with only scattered Africans laboring in chains, their eyes downcast mirrors of submission. Harbor officials boarded first, quills scratching manifests, collecting duties on imported goods. Then, captives emerged in groups, shackled under guard, for preliminary viewings, buyers prodding like livestock handlers, fingers prying mouths for teeth, palms testing muscles for vigor. The Maryland Gazette's advertisement, published October 1, heralded the sale, just imported in the ship Lord Ligonier, Captain Davies from the River Gambia, a cargo of choice, healthy slaves, for sale at Annapolis on Tuesday the 7th of October. No mention of the 42 lost at sea, the fevers, the storms, only the allure of profit, a chilling erasure that bespoke colonial sin, where human worth bowed to tobacco's green. Gold. The auction unfolded at a dockside tavern, the air thick with pipe smoke and rum's bite, bitters and powdered wigs murmuring appraisals. Kunta stood on the block, chains clanking, his body oiled to feign health, masking bruises and hollow cheeks. Teeth examined like a horse's, limbs flexed for strength, dehumanizing scrutiny that twisted his gut. Dr. Thompson touted the Mandinka as suitable for agricultural labor, less inclined to flight, a gross misjudgment rooted in ignorance, treating tribes as interchangeable cogs. John Waller, a planter from Spotsylvania County, Virginia, his family entrenched in tobacco wealth, their estates sprawling along the Rappahannock, eyed Kunta with predatory precision. Needing replacements for slaves felled by disease and exhaustion, he saw potential, a sturdy youth, compact frame promising endurance. Kunta's direct gaze, a spark of unbowed spirit, Waller mistook for tractability. Bidding was swift, Waller's coin secured the deal, ledger noting, one Negro male, approximate 17, paid in full. From crown property to private chattel, Kunta's fate sealed in ink, a transaction echoing the Bible's tales of bondage, where pharaohs amassed wealth on broken backs. The 3-day wagon trek to Spotsylvania jolted over rutted roads, Kunta and others shackled in the bed, fed scraps under starlit skies. Waller's gestures taught crude commands, work, stop, backed by the lash's threat, English's harsh cadence alien to Mandinka's melodic tones. No shared words, only pain's universal tongue. The plantation unfurled like a cursed domain, hundreds of acres of tobacco fields undulating under autumn's amber light, rows of seedlings demanding ceaseless toil. 30 slaves, mostly African-born, a few Virginia-raised, labored under Overseer Connolly's iron fist, his whip a symbol of arbitrary terror. Huts clustered like forlorn villages, thatched roofs leaking, dirt floors cold. Tobacco's cycle was merciless, planting by hand in spring's mud, weeding under blistering sun, worm-picking with fingers raw, topping plants precisely, harvesting leaf by leaf, curing in barns thick with acrid smoke. Dawn to dusk drudgery, rations meager, cornmeal mush, salted fish, bodies breaking under the load, average lifespan a decade in this hell. Waller's first act, renaming. In his ledger, Negro male, purchased Annapolis October 1767, given the name Toby. A deliberate desecration, stripping African roots to forge compliant tools. Connolly barked Toby, pointing insistently. Kunta, heart-pounding, pointed to himself, Kunta Kinte. The refusal ignited fury, a slap, then harder blows. Kunta stood firm, warrior training steeling him, names were eternal, surrender spiritual suicide. The enslaved watched warily, admiration tinged with fear. Fiddler, an elder African seasoned by 40 Virginia years, approached in fractured Mandinka, accept outwardly, preserve inwardly. But Kunta rebuked compromise, partial yielding invited total loss, his father's wisdom a bulwark against soul's corrosion. On the 4th day, Waller orchestrated a spectacle, Kunta bound to a post before assembled slaves, whipped with leather that sliced air like judgment's blade. Each lash tore flesh, blood trickling warm. After each, "What is your name?" "Kunta Kinte," he gasped, until darkness claimed him. Revived in the hut, surrounded by sympathetic eyes, he noted thereof he'd fainted without yielding, a testament to unbroken will assigned to fields, still raw-backed. Kunta navigated confusion, commands incomprehensible, tasks demonstrated once, errors met with lashes. Yet, his blacksmith-honed observation prevailed, watching sequences, timing, nuances. Within weeks, he mimicked flawlessly, evading most punishment, his alertness a quiet victory. Months blurred, endless labor, casual brutality, but Kunta's core endured. Waller's tests, Toby? Met's silence or correction, the name a talisman against erasure. Spiritually, this was divine trial, slavery's sin-staining captors' souls, Kunta's resilience a beacon of redemption's possibility. Like Job, he suffered unjustly, yet clung to wholeness, haunting the system with his unyielding humanity. The plantation's shadows whispered of justice deferred, uprisings brewing, legacies outlasting chains. In this crucible, Kunta's story etched deeper meanings, guilt's invisible shackles on oppressors, sin's generational curse, divine retribution in history's arc cinematically. Picture the fields at dusk, golden light on bent backs, whips cracking like thunder, Kunta's eyes, fierce amid pain, reflecting ancestral fires. Emotionally, dread coils with empathy, curiosity for his fate, reflection on humanity's dark underbelly. The haunting legacy? A name that echoes through centuries, challenging erasure, demanding reckoning. The winter of 1767 to 1768 descended upon the Spotsylvania County plantation like a biblical plague, its icy fingers probing the cracks in the fragile veneer of colonial prosperity. The air turned sharp, laced with the bite of frost that crystallized on tobacco stalks left barren after harvest, the ground hardening into unyielding clay underfoot. For Kunta Kinte, this chill was an alien torment, far removed from the Gambia's human embrace where rains nourished the earth like a mother's milk. The slave quarters, crude cabins of rough-hewn logs, chinked with mud that crumbled in the wind, offered scant shelter, their thin walls whistling with drafts that carried the scent of pine resin in damp decay. Huddled bodies pressed together for warmth, breaths mingling in clouds, while coughs echoed like omens through the night. Frostbite gnawed at extremities, turning toes black and fingers numb, a slow erosion of the body that mirrored the soul's siege. Kunta, now 6 months into his captivity since that fateful July capture, marked what should have been his 18th year, a threshold of manhood in Mandinka rites, where elders would have bestowed blessings under starlit skies, drums thundering approval as he stepped into legacy. Instead, he toiled as Toby, a name spat like a curse, his days a blur of back-breaking labor, clearing fields of stubble, mending fences with hands raw from splinters, all under Overseer Connolly's vigilant glare. The man's whip hung at his belt like a serpent coiled, its leather cracked from use, ready to strike at perceived sloth. John Waller, the master, viewed Kunta's persistent corrections, Kunta Kinte, as a quirk, a stubborn echo of Africa that time would erode. Each quiet insistence earned a cuff, a burst of pain across the temple, but no full lashing. Productivity trumped petty defiance. Waller, a man of ledgers and lineage, his powdered wig framing a face etched with entitlement, assumed the plantation's grind, dawn reveilles, meager cornmeal. Rule, endless rows under an indifferent sun, would grind down this African spirit like millstones on brain. Yet, in this assumption lay Waller's blindness, a sin of hubris echoing Pharaoh's folly. Every utterance of his true name was a victory etched in the ether, a spiritual anchor tethering Kunta to ancestors whose whispers cut through the cold. The enslaved watched, an elder woman stirring pots over flickering fires, her eyes shadowed by years, young boys fetching water, their gazes flicking with awe. They saw a man who had traversed the Middle Passage's abyss, endured the hold's fetid horrors, and now stood unbowed, his silence a roar against erasure. In their hushed gatherings, under quilts patched from scraps, stories circulated like sacred texts, Kunta, the unbreakable, a symbol of resistance in a world designed for surrender. Biblical parallels stirred in their minds, like Daniel in the lion's den, facing beasts of oppression with faith's shield. As snow blanketed the fields in deceptive purity, masking the blood-soaked soil beneath, Kunta's resolve crystallized. Freedom wasn't a distant dream but a divine imperative, a call to reclaim wholeness amid fragmentation. His knowledge was sparse, the ocean lay east, from whence the ship had come, but Virginia's wilderness, dense forests of oak and hickory, rivers snaking like veins, offered no map. No allies yet, save Fiddler, the grizzled veteran whose broken Mandinka wove tales of this land's vastness. Escaped seed had germinated since arrival, watered by daily indignities, the lashes sting, the auction's humiliation, the name's theft. Death loomed regardless, disease-ravaging quarters, where fevers burned like hellfire, claiming lives buried in unmarked pits at the property's edge, souls unmoored without rights. Better to perish pursuing liberty than rot as property. The attempt unfurled in January 1768, under a moon veiled by clouds, the air crisp with the scent of woodsmoke from distant hearths. Connolly absent. In Fredericksburg, the night watch lacks headcounts cursory, doors unbolted. Kunta slipped from the cabin's rear, heart pounding like village drums, his rags thin against the wind's knife. Feet wrapped in scraps, he followed a creek northward, water gurgling over ice like whispered guidance. 8 miles in 12 hours, thorns snagging flesh, breath ragged, the alien terrain a labyrinth of skeletal trees casting long shadows in dawn's gray light. Then, the baying, distant at first, growing into a cacophony of pursuit. Hounds, bred for this hunt, noses attuned to fear's scent. Thomas Matthews, the slave catcher, embodied the system's ruthless efficiency, a gaunt figure in weathered coat, his dogs snarling beasts with eyes like coals. Summoned by Connolly's return, he tracked with methodical precision, payment per recapture fueling his zeal. Surrounded in a clearing, Kunta faced them, gestures demanding surrender, ropes binding wrists and neck like nooses of fate. The march back, paraded on main roads, was spectacle, white onlookers nodding approval, enslaved glimpses from fields, a public sermon on futility. Back at Waller's, the post awaited, the same where named Defiance had drawn blood. Now, terror's theater, Connolly's whip descended in arcs, leather meeting flesh with cracks echoing like thunderclaps. Blood welled, soaking earth, between lashes, will you run again? Kunta's silence, a fortress of will, unnerved them, no pleas, no breaks, drawing from warrior depths where pain was transient, spirit eternal. 30 strikes later, back a lattice of wounds, he was shed confined, a week of shadows, minimal sustenance, the metallic taste of blood constant. Physical agony paled to revelation, no walls held them, only fear's chains. Dogs, patrols, mutilation, the prison psychological, sin's architecture built on terror. Kunta pondered, learn English's harsh edges, map the land through eavesdrop tales, forge alliances in whispers. Patience, alien to his youth, became weapon. Released, scars knitting under salves from sympathetic hands, Kunta returned to fields. Respect shadowed him, fiddler accelerating lessons, master, road, north food shared in secret, bonds forming like underground roots. Solidarity bloomed unseen by whites, who saw competition, reality wove community from shared wounds. Spring 1768 thawed the land, fields greening with tobacco shoots, air humming with bees and the scent of turned soil. 10 months enslaved, Kunta's English sufficed for basics, his work adept planting seedlings with precise bends, weeding under sun's blaze. Fiddler unveiled slavery's sprawl, counties teeming with plantations, economies chained to black labor, Africans outnumbering whites yet subdued by terror. Generations born bound, children inheriting chains, Christianity's cross twisted into control's yoke. No end in sight, system self-perpetuating, a generational curse like Cain's mark. May's warmth ignited second escape, provisions hoarded, cornbread crumbs, dried meat route along roads, English for bluffing errands. 3 days, 20 miles, barns for shelter, heart racing at every hoofbeat. Then, dogs again, Matthew's inexorable hunt. Recaptured, paraded, Waller's fury escalated, standard whipping insufficient. The mutilation, half Kunta's right foot severed, a Virginia staple for recidivists. Dr. William Waller, kin and physician, wielded blade in tool shed, Kunta strapped, no mercy's numbness, pain exploding like white-hot iron. Flesh parted, blood pooling, screams internal as ancestors watched. Practical barbarity, mobility crippled, labor preserved. But spiritually? A desecration, echoing Christ's wounds, sin's blade carving innocence. Waller's view, property modification, Kunta's, torture's abyss, questioning divine silence amid human evil. Recovery in quarters, agony's haze, conversations unveiling survival's tapestry. Secret kin networks. Across estates, midnight rites invoking African gods under moon's veil, children schooled in freedom's lore. Strategies varied, some collaborated for scraps, others compartmentalized, performing submission while nurturing inner fire. Christianity offered solace, redemption's promise, justice in afterlife. Kunta's story spread, the African twice fled, mutilated yet unyielding, name intact. Symbol of resistance, not triumph but endurance, haunting oppressors with guilt's specter. Divine retribution whispered, empires fall, sins repaid. Empathy swells for his suffering, dread for system's depth, curiosity for legacy's bloom. Historically, rooted in 1760s Virginia's records, slave codes, catcher ledgers, plantation diaries, yet spiritually chilling, guilt's chains on captors, redemption's spark in defiance. Cinematically, winter's frost-glazed fields, Kunta's silhouette fleeing into mist, whip's arc in slow motion, blood droplets suspended, amputation's blade glinting, face contorted in silent scream. Pacing rhythmic, short breaths of action, pauses for soul's reflection, dread building like gathering storm. The flame endured, a testament that bodies break, but spirits, forged in divine fire, illuminate darkness, promising retribution's dawn. The years on the Waller plantation stretched like an endless twilight, shadows lengthening across tobacco fields that drank deeply from the blood and sweat of the bound. Kunta Kinte, now limping on the scarred remnant of his right foot, a jagged stump wrapped in rags that never fully healed, returned to labor in the spring of 1768, the air thick with the scent of blooming dogwood and turned earth, promising another cycle of profit for the masters. The amputation, that barbaric calculus of control, had reshaped his fate, no longer fit for the relentless pace of field gangs, where bodies bent in unison under the sun's merciless glare. He was reassigned to lighter duties. Garden tending first, kneeling in loamy soil fragrant with herbs and vegetables, fingers probing weeds amid the buzz of bees, then, ascending in ironic privilege, to driving Dr. William Waller's buggy, a polished conveyance of black lacquer and brass that carried the physician across Spotsylvania's rutted roads. This shift thrust Kunta into the orbit of the big house, its white columns gleaming like false piety against verdant lawns. He waited in the yard, reins in hand, observing the Wallers whirled through cracks in their facade, morning prayers intoned in drawing rooms scented with beeswax and tea, dinners where laughter mingled with casual discourse on crop yields and Negro management, church Sundays in pews reserved for whites, hymns soaring while enslaved souls stood silent at the rear. Dr. Waller, the very hand that had wielded the blade on Kunta's foot, his face benign, spectacles glinting as he dispensed tonics to ailing planters, embodied the chilling ordinariness of evil. These were no snarling demons, but fathers kissing children goodnight, wives embroidering samplers with biblical verses like, "Servants, obey your masters," all while ledger entries tallied human worth in pounds sterling. This proximity unveiled a profound horror, slavery's sinews threaded through every fiber of colonial society, sanctified by pulpits preaching divine order, upheld by laws codifying black bodies as chattel, fueled by tobacco's golden leaves that built mansions and fortunes. Not the work of aberrant tyrants, but a collective sin normalized, unquestioned, a moral blindness echoing the pharaohs who ignored Moses' pleas. Kunta's warrior spirit recoiled, empathy yielded not to forgiveness, but to clarity. The beast was systemic, vast as the Atlantic he'd crossed in chains, devouring souls not through isolated cruelty, but through the banality of a world that deemed one race subhuman by divine decree. Time eroded edges, yet sharpened resolve. By 1769, 1770, 1771, Kunta's English flowed fluent, harsh consonants softened by practice, gleaned from eavesdropped conversations and fiddler-patient tutelage. Words once alien now revealed truths, auction notices in gazettes, sermons justifying bondage with twisted scripture, whispers of revolution brewing in northern colonies yet blind to southern irons. Resistance evolved, escape impossible, open revolt suicidal. Instead, preservation clinging to Kunta Kinte in the privacy of his mind, reciting lineages under starlit quarters where breaths fogged in communal warmth. A Mandinka warrior still, foot maimed but spirit towering, he forged quiet defiance, teaching fragments of culture in stolen moments, ensuring Africa's echo lingered amid Virginia's alien soil. In this crucible bloomed love. Belle, a household cook, her skin rich as ebony, hands scarred from hearth fires, eyes carrying the weight of Virginia-born wisdom tempered by parental tales of Africa, drew him close. Their bond kindled in the kitchen's steamy haze, scents of cornbread and stew mingling with whispered exchanges while Kunta awaited the doctor. Belle bridged worlds, English her tongue, yet Mandinka phrases from her mother, Christianity public, African spirits invoked in secret rites under moon's veil. She navigated survival's tightrope, compliance for scraps of mercy, resistance and hidden heart. In Kunta, she saw unquenchable fire, in her, he found resilient earth. 1772 brought life amid death's shadow, Belle's pregnancy, a fragile light. In Mandinka tradition, children extended lineage, ancestors reborn through names and stories. Yet slavery twisted this joy, offspring-born property, destined for whips or sale. Their daughter arrived in 1773, Kunta insisting on Kizzy stay put, a plea against the system's theft. Fatherhood ignited fierce purpose, cradling the infant in calloused arms, he murmured Mandinka lullabies, tracing Jufur's rivers on her palm, reciting 7 generations back to holy men and blacksmiths. "You are whole," he'd whisper, voice cracking like dry earth, defying the ledger branding her chattel. Belle watched, heart-torn, admiring the heritage's flame, fearing its spark drawing punishment. She'd buried infants sold away, graves unmarked, grief a constant ache. Tensions simmered, Kunta's absolutism risking all for cultural purity, Belle's pragmatism urging English fluency, Christian facade, skills for house privileges. Both born of love's desperation, mirroring slavery's cruel dichotomy, preserve soul or shield body? Kizzy grew, a vibrant child with curious eyes and laughter like birdsong amid thorns. Kunta taught covertly, Kami Balongo for Great River, evoking Gambia's flow, words for cow, harvest, guitar useless practically, sacred symbolically, links to a free world. When she babbled them, joy pierced him, a rebellion in syllables whites couldn't decipher. 1780 tested foundations. At 7, Kizzy befriended Missy N, Dr. Waller's niece, a pale child of similar age, visiting with dolls and innocence unscarred by full comprehension. Play transcended chains briefly, games in the yard, secrets shared under oaks dripping Spanish moss. Missy N taught reading, letters scratched in dirt, then forbidden books smuggled, illiteracy laws be damned in child's ignorance. Literacy, power perilous, passes forgeable. Forgeable, minds awakened. Kunta and Belle agonized, forbid, deny tool, allow, court catastrophe. They permitted, warning stern, conceal eternally. Seeds of tragedy sown. By 1785, Kizzy flowered into adolescence, literate shadowwriter, African echoes in her voice, American grit in her step. Love found her in Noah, a youth from neighboring fields, their courtship in church gatherings, hymns masking stolen glances, hands brushing under watchful eyes. 1786, Noah's escape dream, to Pennsylvania's gradual freedom, then return for her. Romantic folly against systemic juggernaut. He begged a pass, Kizzy, 16 and aflame, forged it, elegant script betraying her gift. Failure swift, catchers unearthed the document, handwriting traced. Fury unleashed, Dr. Waller sold Kizzy instantly to a Carolina trader, chains clanking as she vanished south, no farewells. One dawn with family, next, severed forever. Devastation cratered Kunta. Capture, passage, beatings, mutilation he'd endured, spirit forged stronger. But this, child's theft, love's commerce, broke depths untouched. Withdrawal followed, silences lengthening in the buggy's sway, eyes distant as Gambia's horizons. Not surrender, name intact, dignity preserved. But resignation's veil, resistance couldn't shield beloved from sin's ultimate weapon, sale. Belle's pneumonia claimed her in 1810, quarters reeking of smoke and despair, no physician for the enslaved. Kunta labored on driving, tending, until 1822, 70 winters etching his frame, death coming quietly on the plantation. Ledger, Toby, approximates 70, natural causes erasure complete in ink, Africa unmentioned, struggles omitted. Yet, oral flames leaped. Enslaved whispered of the African unbowed, name. Refused, escapes defiant, heritage taught. Stories threaded communities, defying whips and sails. Kizzy endured in North Carolina, birthing George Chicken George from cockfights forced upon him, raped by master, yet surviving. Freedom touched his line post 1865. Generations carried the torch, name, lineage, captures tale. Alex Haley, 1960s descendant, unearthed roots, documents to griots in Jufur reciting Kunta's vanishing. Roots birth 1970s reckoning, millions confronted slavery's visceral truth, not abstract evil, but ordinary lives shattered. Genealogy surged, dialogues on legacy ignited. Enslaved as resistors, not mere victims, identity preserved amid apocalypse. But no tidy redemption. Kunta's Odyssey, ordinary horror writ large. Millions captured, middled, maimed, separated, system sanctified, economy built on bones. America's creed, all men created equal, hypocrisy's foundation, affects rippling, inequality's shadows, justice deferred. His victory? Not freedom's gain, but souls unconquered. Slavery chained flesh, severed limbs, stole kin, yet couldn't extinguish ancestral fire. Kunta Kinte endured, whispered through bloodlines, haunting oppressors' descendants with guilt's specter. Divine scales tip slowly, sin's architects judged by history's unyielding gaze. Cinematically, buggy rides at dusk, fireflies dancing like ancestor spirits, Kizzy sail, slow-motion chains, tear-streaked faces, deathbed silence, fading to griot chants. Sensory depths, kitchen warmth, blood's iron tang post-amputation, child's laughter piercing despair. Emotionally, empathy's flood for losses, dread its system's vastness, reflection on identity's power, curiosity for legacy's reach. Spiritually chilling, biblical bondage redux Egypt's plagues on modern pharaohs, redemption in remembrance. Guilt's inheritance burdens nations, resistance's spark illuminates paths to atonement. Kunta's ghost whispers, wholeness transcends chains. In preserving self, he triumphed where empires failed, eternal, unchained.